April 21st, 1977. Dover, Massachusetts. Population 4,529. A town so unremarkable that most state maps barely bothered to label it. But on this particular Thursday night, something would emerge from the darkness along Farm Street that would transform this forgettable dot on the map into one of America's most enduring cryptozoological mysteries. Dover sat 15 miles southwest of Boston, nestled along the Charles River, where rolling woodlands met farmland. The town had existed since colonial times, quietly accumulating centuries of mundane history. No famous Americans were born here. No major battles were fought on its soil. The most exciting entry in the local historical repository was probably a dispute over property lines in 1823. This was a place where generations of families had lived, worked, and died in comfortable obscurity. The kind of town where everyone knew their neighbors, where the biggest scandal might be someone's daughter dating a boy from the next county over. The landscape surrounding Dover was classic New England terrain. Dense forests of oak and pine pressed close to the town's borders. Stone walls built by farmers centuries ago still crisscrossed the fields and woods. Narrow country lanes wound through this territory like veins, connecting scattered farmhouses and the occasional subdivision. During the day, it was picturesque. At night, it became something else entirely. After sunset, Dover's back roads transformed into tunnels of absolute darkness. Streetlights didn't exist out here. When you drove these winding lanes at night, your headlights carved a small bubble of visibility through an ocean of black. Beyond that cone of light, anything could be watching. Most residents had made these drives hundreds of times without incident. The darkness held no terror because it was familiar, predictable, safe. Massachusetts had always been fertile ground for strange tales. The state's vast wilderness areas, largely untouched by development, had generated countless reports over the years. Hikers claimed to have encountered Sasquatch-like creatures in the deep woods. Motorists reported strange lights hovering over remote fields. Local Native American legends spoke of the Pukwudgies, malevolent dwarf creatures that inhabited the forests long before European settlers arrived. The Bridgewater Triangle, just 30 miles south of Dover, was already gaining a reputation as a hotspot for paranormal activity. But Dover had remained immune to such strangeness until now. The teenagers who would have the first encounters were typical kids. Bill Bartlett, 17, was a responsible student who worked part-time at a local garage. John Baxter, 15, was known for his honesty and level-headedness. Abby Brabham, also 15, was a good student from a respected family. These weren't troubled kids looking for attention. They weren't prone to wild stories or elaborate pranks. They were the sons and daughters of Dover's working families, the kind of young people every small town produces and takes pride in. None of them knew each other particularly well. They attended the same high school but ran in different circles. They had no reason to coordinate stories or collaborate on a hoax. This detail would become crucial later when investigators tried to make sense of what happened. Easter weekend 1977 started like any other holiday in Dover. Families prepared for church services. Kids looked forward to egg hunts. The high school students made plans to hang out, drive around, maybe catch a movie in the next town over. The weather was mild for April, with temperatures in the 50s during the day, dropping into the 40s at night. There was no moon that Thursday evening. The darkness would be especially complete. At approximately 10:30 p.m. on April 21st, Bill Bartlett was driving his Volkswagen north along Farm Street. He had two friends with him, Mike Mazzaka and Andy Brody. They were heading home after hanging out, taking the familiar route through the dark countryside. The headlights swept across the familiar landscape: trees, stone walls, the occasional mailbox marking a distant driveway. Then Bartlett saw something that would change his life forever. What happened next would set off a chain of events that continues to puzzle investigators, cryptozoologists, and skeptics alike. Over the next 24 hours, multiple witnesses would report encounters with something that defied explanation, something that looked like nothing in the natural world, something that would come to be known as the Dover Demon. The legend was about to begin. Bill Bartlett almost didn't see it. His attention was on the road ahead, navigating the familiar curves of Farm Street in the darkness. Mike and Andy were talking in the background, their voices a comfortable buzz as the Volkswagen's headlights cut through the night. Then something moved on the left side of the road. At first, Bartlett thought it was a dog or cat, prowling along the low stone wall that bordered the street. Animals used these old farmers' walls as highways through the woods all the time. Nothing unusual. But as the headlights swept across whatever was perched there, Bartlett's brain struggled to process the image. The creature was roughly 3.5 feet tall, crouched on the stone wall in a way that seemed almost deliberate. It had 4 spindly limbs that looked painfully thin, like spider legs magnified to impossible proportions. The body was emaciated, the color of a peach, hairless and rough-textured. But the head made Bartlett's stomach drop. It was enormous, grotesquely out of proportion to the body beneath it. Oval-shaped, balanced on a neck that looked ready to snap under the weight. And the eyes, 2 large, round, orange orbs that stared directly into the headlights without blinking. They glowed in the light, brighter and more vivid than any animal's eyes should. There was no nose, no mouth, no ears. Just those massive, unblinking eyes set in that oversized skull. The creature's fingers wrapped around the stones of the wall, incredibly long and thin, almost like tendrils. It moved slowly across the top of the wall, methodical and strange, unlike anything Bartlett had ever seen. The encounter lasted perhaps 5 seconds. Every detail burned itself into his memory with crystalline clarity. Then the creature melted into the darkness beyond the headlights, disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared. "Did you guys see that?" Bartlett's voice cracked, his knuckles wide on the steering wheel. Mike and Andy looked at him, confused. They'd been talking, paying no attention to the road. Neither had seen anything. See what? That thing. On the wall. Bartlett's foot pressed harder on the gas. He wanted distance. His friends exchanged glances. The genuine fear in Bartlett's face told them this wasn't a joke. When Bartlett got home, he went straight to his father and told him everything. Then he did something crucial. He sat down and drew a detailed picture while the memory was fresh. The sketch showed a creature with a bulbous head, enormous round eyes, and a thin body with elongated limbs. It looked like nothing from the natural world. But Bartlett's encounter was only the beginning. While he was drawing his sketch on the other side of town, John Baxter was walking home alone along Miller Hill Road. It was close to midnight. He was late, and his parents would be angry. He quickened his pace. The street was completely empty. No cars, no lights in windows. Just Baxter, the pavement, and darkness pressing in from all sides. Then, up ahead, another figure walking toward him. Baxter felt relief. Another person. As it got closer, he assumed it was a young child based on its short stature. But what would a kid be doing out here at midnight? He slowed, squinting into the darkness. The figure was just outside the reach of a distant streetlight, visible only as a dark silhouette, maybe 3 feet tall, watching him. "Hello?" Baxter called out. No response. The figure stood completely still in a way no child would stand. Something was wrong about its posture. Then it turned and scurried off the road, disappearing into a wooded gully. The movement was fast, the gait all wrong. It moved on two legs but hunched forward, almost simian. Baxter's curiosity overcame caution. He ran after it, hearing rustling leaves and snapping twigs ahead. He crashed down into the gully, breathing hard. Silence. Then he saw it. About 30 meters away, standing on a large rock near a tree, was a shape that stopped him cold. In the dim moonlight filtering through clouds, he could make out a thin, pale body that looked almost like a hairless monkey. But the proportions were impossible. The neck was painfully thin, supporting a head far too large, bulbous and melon-shaped. The face appeared completely blank except for two dark patches where eyes should be. The creature stood perfectly still on that rock, watching. Baxter could feel its attention like a physical weight. Panic replaced curiosity. This thing had led him away from the road, into this isolated gully. Why? He didn't wait to find out. Baxter turned and ran, crashing through undergrowth toward the road. Branches whipped his face. He stumbled over roots but kept his feet. Behind him, nothing. No sounds of pursuit. Somehow that made it worse. He burst onto Miller Hill Road, gasping. Minutes later, headlights appeared. A young couple slowed, seeing him disheveled and distressed by the roadside. "Are you okay?" the driver asked. Baxter climbed into their car, hands shaking, clothes covered in dirt and leaves. He couldn't explain what had happened. How could he tell them he'd been chased by some creature that looked like nothing on earth? When he got home, he went straight to his room and began to draw. The sketch showed a creature with a thin body, oversized head, and blank face. It looked remarkably similar to Bartlett's drawing from earlier that evening, though the two teenagers barely knew each other and had no way of comparing notes. 2 witnesses, 2 encounters, same night, same impossible creature. But the Dover demon wasn't finished. 24 hours later, it would appear one final time to 2 people simultaneously. The following evening, April 22nd, 15-year-old Abby Brabham sat in the passenger seat of her boyfriend Will's car, willing him to say something. They were driving home from a party where they'd argued. She'd made an offhand remark about their relationship that had angered him. 5 minutes of silence had felt like an eternity. She peered out the window at the passing countryside, trees and fields briefly illuminated by the headlights. They were close to her home now, leaving precious few minutes to resolve the tension. She was frantically thinking of something to say when she caught sight of something ahead, squatting at the roadside. As the car moved forward, the headlights picked out a strange humanoid shape settled on its haunches, staring at the approaching vehicle. Brabham gasped as its features were gradually revealed. An oversized head sat atop an emaciated, painfully thin body that was tan in color, with 4 long, spindly limbs. But it was the face that shocked her most, entirely devoid of any mouth or nose. Just a pair of almond-shaped eyes that seemed to regard her with hungry malevolence. As the vehicle passed, they shone bright green in the headlights. Only meters from the horror, Brabham screamed. Her outburst caused Will to slam on the brakes. As she sobbed and pointed out the rear window, he looked in the wing mirror. The red brake lights reflected off a short, spindly figure that had risen from the roadside. For a moment, it studied them. Then it suddenly made off across the carriageway into the undergrowth on the opposite side. 3 encounters, 4 witnesses, 2 detailed sketches that matched despite being drawn independently. The Dover demon had announced itself to the world. The morning after the encounters, Dover was still blissfully unaware that anything unusual had happened. Bill Bartlett went to school. John Baxter nursed his embarrassment about coming home late and disheveled. Abby Brabham tried to forget the screaming argument that had followed her screaming at something on the road. Life continued as normal until the witnesses started talking. It began innocently enough. Bartlett mentioned his sighting to a friend during lunch. Word spread through the high school cafeteria with the speed that only teenage gossip can achieve. By the end of the school day, half the student body had heard that Bill Bartlett had seen some weird creature on Farm Street. Most dismissed it as a joke or an exaggeration. Bartlett was known for being reliable, but everyone sees strange things in headlights at night, right? A deer at an odd angle, a dog with mange. The mind plays tricks in darkness. Then John Baxter heard the rumor and went cold. He found Bartlett after school, pulled him aside and said, "Describe exactly what you saw." When Bartlett finished, Baxter's hands were shaking. "I saw it too. Last night. Same time you did, probably. Different part of town." They compared their drawings. The similarity was unmistakable and deeply unsettling. By the weekend, when Abby Brabham's encounter became known, Dover realized it had a genuine mystery on its hands. 3 separate incidents, 4 witnesses, and the descriptions matched in ways that couldn't be explained by coincidence or mass hysteria. Local reporter and cryptozoology enthusiast Lauren Coleman got involved, interviewing each witness separately and compiling their accounts. What emerged was a portrait of something that defied easy explanation. The head was the dominant feature in every account. Disproportionately large, roughly oval, or melon-shaped, balanced precariously on a neck that looked far too thin to support it. Bartlett estimated the head was the size of a basketball, maybe slightly smaller. On a creature only 3.5 feet tall, that proportion was grotesque, almost cartoonish. Except this was no cartoon. The body told a story of starvation or disease, emaciated to the point where the witness descriptions used words like skeletal and painfully thin. Ribs would have been visible if it had a rib cage like a mammal. The torso was narrow, the waist almost non-existent. 4 limbs extended from this wasted frame, each one absurdly long and spindly. The arms seemed to reach nearly to the ground, even when the creature was standing upright. The legs were thin as broomsticks, but apparently strong enough to support rapid movement. But what unified all the accounts, what made the sketches so eerily similar, was the face. Or rather, the absence of one. There was no mouth. Bartlett insisted to Coleman, "I know how that sounds. I know people will think I just couldn't see it in the light. But I'm telling you, there was no mouth. The face was smooth where a mouth should be." Baxter agreed. It was like looking at a mannequin, a really disturbing mannequin. No mouth, no nose that I could see. Just blank. Brabham, who'd had the most direct view, was emphatic. "I was close enough to see every detail. There was no mouth, no nostrils, no ears, nothing. Just those eyes." The eyes dominated what little face existed. Enormous, disproportionate even to the already disproportionate head. Almond-shaped according to Brabham, more circular according to Bartlett. But everyone agreed on their size and their unsettling quality. Here's where the accounts diverged in a way that actually strengthened their credibility. Bartlett, seeing the creature in his headlights head-on, described large orange eyes that reflected the light brilliantly. Like a cat's eyes in headlights, but bigger and brighter, more intense. Baxter, viewing the creature in dim moonlight from an angle, saw only dark voids. I couldn't see any color, just 2 dark patches like holes in the head, but I could feel them watching me. Brabham, catching the creature in profile as her boyfriend's car passed, saw bright green reflections. They glowed green, not orange, green, and they were looking right at me. Coleman recognized this as significant. Animal eyes reflect different colors depending on the angle of incident light and the structure of the tapetum lucidum, the reflective layer behind the retina. A dog's eyes might appear red-orange when facing headlights directly, but green when caught at an angle. The fact that the witnesses reported different colors suggested they'd seen something with genuinely reflective eyes under different conditions, not something they'd imagined or coordinated. The skin texture fascinated investigators. In an era before sophisticated costume making, before CGI and advanced prosthetics, creating something with the described texture would have been extremely difficult. It wasn't smooth, Bartlett explained. It looked rough, textured, like sandpaper, but organic. Does that make sense? Brabham used a different comparison. Like a peach. That kind of rough, fuzzy texture, but on skin. And the color was peachy too. Tan or beige. No one described anything that sounded like fur, scales, or feathers. The creature was apparently naked, its skin exposed. The color was consistently described as tan, beige, or peachy tan. Not the gray of popular alien descriptions. Not the brown or black of bears or apes. Something in between. Something that didn't fit standard categories. The hands were what haunted Bartlett's dreams. The fingers were wrong. Too long. Way too long. They looked almost like tentacles the way they wrapped around the stones of the wall. I kept thinking they had too many joints, that they were bending in places fingers shouldn't bend. He demonstrated with his own hand, trying to show how the creature's fingers had curved around the rocks. Imagine your fingers were twice as long and half as thick. Now imagine them moving independently, each one finding its own grip. It was like watching someone play a piano, but creepy. The movement patterns were another point of convergence. None of the witnesses described normal bipedal locomotion. Bartlett. It was crabbing along the wall, moving sideways but deliberately, like it was following a specific path. Baxter. It ran on two legs but hunched way forward, almost on all fours but not quite. The movement was fast but jerky, not smooth like a running animal. Taintor. It scuttled. That's the only word for it, like a crab or a spider, but on two legs. Unnatural. The behavior was equally consistent and equally puzzling. In every encounter, the creature fled when discovered. It made no aggressive moves, no threatening gestures. It never approached the witnesses. If anything, it seemed startled to be seen, as if it had been caught doing something it shouldn't. Bartlett's creature froze when the headlights hit it, then disappeared into darkness. Baxter's creature led him into the woods, but then just stood watching, making no move to attack even though it had lured him into an isolated location. Brabham's creature squatted by the roadside until the car's approach forced it to flee. It acted like it was hiding, Baxter told Coleman, like it didn't want to be seen. When I chased it, I think it was trying to get away from me, not lead me somewhere. It just ended up cornered on that rock. The complete absence of sound was another recurring element. No growls, no hisses, no vocalizations of any kind. No sound of breathing. When it moved through the woods, it made the normal sounds of branches breaking and leaves rustling. But the creature itself was silent. That's what made it so creepy, Baxter said. It was watching me from that rock, and it was completely silent. No breathing sounds. Nothing. Like it wasn't even alive. The question of how it breathed, how it ate, how it survived without visible mouth or nose troubled everyone who examined the case. Some speculated about a mouth on the underside of the head or on another part of the body. Others wondered if it breathed through its skin like an amphibian. The witnesses had no answers. They only knew what they'd seen, a face with no openings except eyes. When Coleman compiled all the witness statements, sketches, and details into a comprehensive report, a disturbing picture emerged. This was either a completely unknown creature, a being from somewhere else, or the most elaborate and well-coordinated hoax in Massachusetts history. But what possible motive could these teenagers have for a hoax? They didn't know each other well. They hadn't coordinated their stories. Their drawings had been made independently before they'd compared notes. They gained nothing from the attention except ridicule from classmates and skepticism from adults. Bartlett's sketch became the iconic image. That bulbous head with enormous eyes, that skeletal body with spindly limbs, that complete absence of facial features. It looked like something from a nightmare, from science fiction, from anywhere except the quiet woods of Dover, Massachusetts. The composite picture was clear. Something approximately 3.5 feet tall, bipedal with an oversized head, emaciated body, rough tan skin, no visible facial features except large reflective eyes, and extremely long fingers. Something that moved in an unsettling, unnatural way. Something that seemed intelligent enough to hide, to flee, to watch from a distance. Something that looked like absolutely nothing in the known animal kingdom. Coleman dubbed it the Dover Demon, a name that would stick for decades. The media loved the alliteration. Skeptics loved having a catchy name to debunk. Believers loved having a new cryptid to investigate. But for the witnesses, it wasn't about names or fame or solving a mystery. It was about what they'd seen in those brief, terrifying moments when their headlights or the moonlight revealed something impossible. "I know what I saw," Bartlett told Coleman years later. "I've spent 40 years having people tell me it was a dog, a deer, a baby moose, a prank, a hallucination. I know what I saw. It wasn't any of those things. It was something else, something that shouldn't exist. And the drawings remain, preserved in cryptozoology archives. Silent testimony to 3 nights in April when 4 teenagers saw something that defied explanation. Something with a face that wasn't quite a face, watching them from the darkness of a small New England town. The Dover Demon appeared for exactly 25 hours. 3 encounters, 4 witnesses. Then, nothing. Complete silence. That abrupt disappearance might be the most puzzling aspect of the entire case. If this was a creature living in Dover's woods, why show itself only during one weekend? If it was passing through, where from and to where? And if it was a hoax, why stop before capitalizing on the attention? The investigation that followed was remarkably thorough for a small-town incident. Lauren Coleman conducted detailed interviews. Local police searched the sighting locations. Wildlife experts examined misidentification possibilities. Skeptics proposed rational explanations. Believers offered exotic theories, none fully satisfied. The hoax theory seemed obvious initially. Teenagers in costume running through woods, frightening classmates. Classic small-town prank. But the details destroyed this explanation. The sightings occurred late at night across several miles in 40-degree weather. Running around naked or minimally clothed would be brutally uncomfortable. The creature's movement, that unsettling, scuttling gait, would be difficult to fake convincingly. Most damning, nobody ever claimed credit. Hoaxers eventually reveal themselves. They want recognition, the satisfaction of having fooled people. Yet 46 years have passed. None of the witnesses have ever admitted fabrication. They've maintained their accounts consistently, gaining nothing but ongoing skepticism and occasional ridicule. If this was a prank, it was the most committed, unrewarding prank in history, Coleman noted. These kids subjected themselves to intense questioning and never wavered. For what? No money, no fame. It made their lives harder. Could it have been a known animal distorted by poor lighting and fear? The moose calf theory gained initial traction. Moose have long, spindly legs and large heads. A young moose with a light coat might appear strange in headlights, particularly if standing at an odd angle. Problems emerged immediately. Dover is nowhere near moose habitat. No adult moose sightings were reported. All witnesses were familiar with local wildlife and had seen deer in headlights countless times. They knew what animals looked like under these conditions. More critically, the complete absence of a snout or muzzle ruled out virtually all mammals. The exotic pet theory suggested an escaped monkey or ape. Spider monkeys have thin limbs. Gibbons have long arms and unusual movement patterns. Again, details didn't align. Primates have fur. The witnesses described bare, rough skin. Primates have expressive faces with visible mouths and noses. The Dover demon had none of these, and no one reported losing an exotic pet. The diseased animal explanation proposed severe mange causing hair loss and deformity. Foxes with advanced mange can look bizarrely alien. This collapsed under scrutiny. Disease doesn't create uniform deformities. 4 witnesses describing identical, specific abnormalities. The same oversized head, blank face, and body proportions across multiple encounters. Impossible. Then came the exotic explanations. The alien theory had obvious appeal. The Dover demon matched gray alien descriptions. Large head, enormous eyes, thin body, no visible mouth or nose. The creature's apparent intelligence, the way it watched witnesses, suggested cognition beyond animal instinct. But critical elements were missing. No UFO sightings that weekend. No strange lights. No missing time. No physical evidence. The creature behaved nothing like typical alien encounter scenarios. It fled from humans rather than attempting contact. It left tracks, made sounds in brush, had eyes that reflected light like Earth animals. If this was an alien, it was remarkably terrestrial. The cryptid theory treated the Dover demon as an undiscovered species. Massachusetts has vast wilderness. The Northeast has a long history of cryptid sightings. Perhaps this was another hidden animal. Researchers noted an intriguing pattern. All sightings occurred near water. Bartlett's encounter was near a stream feeding the Charles River. Baxter was chased to a gully containing a large pond. Brabham's sighting was close to wetlands. This suggested an aquatic or semi-aquatic creature. The smooth, rough skin could suit amphibious life. The absence of visible ears and nose might be underwater adaptations. But what species? Nothing in zoological records matched. No known amphibian grows 3.5 feet tall with that structure. Then came a crucial discovery. Dover resident Mark Sinat reported a similar encounter in summer 1972, 5 years earlier. He described something short and upright with brightly glowing eyes running across the road, disappearing near a pond. This earlier sighting suggested the Dover demon might be periodic, appearing every few years. Perhaps migratory, passing through Dover on a regular route. Perhaps living in the region's extensive underground cave systems, occasionally surfacing. When researchers plotted all sightings on a map, including CNOTs, they formed a rough line cutting through Dover. As if something was traveling in a specific direction, this supported migration theory. The creature was passing through, following some instinctive path, indifferent to human settlement. This explained why it seemed surprised when discovered, why it fled rather than engaging, why it disappeared so completely. It had simply moved on, continuing its journey, but migrating from where to where? And why was it never seen in other towns along its route? In 1996, an intriguing report emerged from Varginha, Brazil. Authorities allegedly captured a creature with a large head, thin body, and dark eyes. Some researchers noted similarities to the Dover demon, suggesting related species or even the same creature appearing globally. However, the Virginia case remains controversial and poorly documented, making any connection speculative. 46 years have passed since that Easter weekend. Dover has grown and changed. The woods where Baxter was chased have been partially developed. The stone wall where Bartlett saw the creature has been rebuilt. New generations of teenagers have never heard of the Dover demon, but the mystery endures. The witnesses, now in their 60s, have never recanted. Bill Bartlett still has his original sketch, yellowed but clear. John Baxter still remembers standing in that gully, watching something impossible watch him back. Abby Brabham still describes those green eyes glowing in the headlights. They've been interviewed dozens of times over decades. Researchers have analyzed their accounts for inconsistencies, signs of deception or false memory. They've found none. The stories have remained remarkably stable over 46 years. People can believe what they want, Bartlett said in 2015. I know I didn't see a dog or a moose or someone in a costume. I saw something that shouldn't exist according to everything we know. But it did exist. For about 5 seconds on a Thursday night in April, it existed right there in my headlights. And then it was gone. The Dover demon represents a perfect cryptozoological mystery. Multiple credible witnesses, consistent descriptions, detailed contemporary documentation. No satisfactory conventional explanation. No definitive proof of anything extraordinary. It exists in that frustrating space between dismissible and provable, between ordinary and impossible. Skeptics can't quite explain it away. Believers can't quite prove it real. The case taught us something valuable. The world still holds mysteries. Even in a small town 15 miles from Boston, even in the well-mapped late 20th century, something unknown can appear. Something that defies our categories and challenges our certainty about what is and isn't possible. The files remain open. The sketches remain archived. The witnesses remain certain. And the Dover demon remains unexplained. On those April nights in 1977, 4 teenagers saw something in the darkness of a quiet Massachusetts town. Something with an oversized head and enormous eyes. Something that moved wrong, looked wrong, was wrong by every measure of natural order. What was it? An unknown species? A visitor from elsewhere? A dimensional anomaly? Something we don't yet have concepts to understand. We may never know. But somewhere in the woods of Massachusetts, in the rolling hills and dense forests that have kept secrets for centuries, perhaps it still moves through the darkness, watching, waiting, occasionally glimpsed by startled witnesses who will spend the rest of their lives trying to explain what they saw. The legend endures. The question remains. And the Dover demon, whatever it was, waits in the shadows of history, a reminder that not every mystery demands a solution, and not every darkness reveals its secrets. What did they really see on those April nights in 1977? The answer, like the creature itself, remains hidden in the dark.